this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Some people say it's wrong to be this into sports, but the new shape of my Galaxy Z Fold 8 from Samsung is just right for scrolling my socials for memes about the GOAT. And when I want to watch games on the go, I just unfold it for double the screen size. I can rage bait Dave about his team and track my fantasy squad's wins all at the same time, too. Oh, and now it's time for a victory lap. Woo!
Whatever you're into, the all-new Galaxy Z Fold 8 is the right size to get really into it. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football. So tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Ego, DeWalt, Filtrete products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Josh Norris is a fantasy analyst with Yahoo who co-hosts the popular YouTube channel with Hayden Winks, appropriately titled Yahoo Fantasy Football with Josh and Hayden. He's a fellow resident of Charlotte, he's a dad, and he too is technically a JJ. These are his late round perspectives. This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. We've partnered up with DraftKings again this year for Best Ball, and we've got a can't-miss offer on their biggest Best Ball contest ever. $20 million in total prizes. It's draft one, get one. Draft your team once, no weekly lineup management, and your top scorers start automatically each week, all season long. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and sign up with promo code LATEROUND. Enter a lineup in the $20 million Best Ball contest for $25 and get a bonus ticket for a second entry. 2 shots at the title. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. I realized, I think the last time we did a show together, genuinely, was on Perspectives.
Yep.
Like 2.5 years ago.
Was I sick then too?
No, what we opened up with was an N64 discussion.
There we go. Oh, I need to show you something. I wish I had it here to follow along with that conversation. Have you ever heard of something called the AYN Thor?
No.
I don't play it. You know, I don't have time to play video games anymore.
What is it, a system?
It's a system that is basically like a 3DS on steroids that you can emulate basically anything from, I don't know, Super Nintendo to PS2, and it plays it like perfectly. So I have this thing, and I probably have like 50 games on it, and I've played about an hour worth of Madden era PS2, and that's it. But it's just cool that I have all these things at my hands when I would have to go to like Electronics Boutique in Charlotte to like buy these games for $40 and then trade them in for the next one, all that stuff. So it's a much easier world.
Were you like me back in the day? We're talking like early 2000s.
Yep.
You know, so what, we're like early high school, late middle school, something around then. And you open up Madden and you're simply doing franchise mode.
And you're spending all of your time making sure that everyone has the right equipment that they actually wear on game days.
Yes. And you gotta, but like I would sit in my basement with my boys and I say that like they were my children. But like we'd be hanging out. We would draft teams back then.
Yeah.
And I remember that it was my way of like understanding defensive players, especially because I started getting into like fantasy around that time. And so like I remember like it was when Ed Reed was like a year 1, year 2 type player, and he was like sickeningly good in Madden. I'm like, who is this guy? And then we would always be drafting him early on in these drafts, and then he ended up being Ed Reed, who we know now.
I mean, those were the days. Like you could just go home and the hours were just burned by, and you would eat like, you know, Pizza Hut, drink Mountain Dew. The world didn't matter. Calories and carbohydrates didn't matter. And I mean, sometimes I do wish like life is great, but like give me 24 hours back in that timeline and I would not sleep, and I would take advantage of every single minute of it.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, man. It's and like the soundtracks of those games.
So good. So memorable.
The music. So memorable. I have a video game soundtracks playlist on Spotify that I listen to sometimes.
It's like a bunch of Good Charlotte and like POD and like all that stuff.
some random Blink songs.
You and I are like the exact same era of everything when it comes to NFL, when it comes to video games, when it comes to movies.
And like just pop culture in general and stuff.
So I live in a neighborhood now that is like, you know, it has like a community pool and tennis courts. And, you know, there are sidewalks in every street, and it's like its own little cohesive environment. So I actually get like, you know, kids walking to the end of the street to play with their friends, or like riding bikes and doing all that stuff. And it does give me like this nostalgia of when we grew up and like that was allowed versus, you know, I got to drop you off here. That's across town 20 minutes and you can't go anywhere by yourself and all this type of stuff. So it gets me excited now that I have a 7-month-old, that when they're 7, hopefully like their best friend lives here and they can just go over there for hours and hours and hours a day.
I got to tell you, my daughter just turned 8.
Yeah.
Okay. And she has, you know, now that she's in elementary school and stuff, we have friends in the neighborhood that also go to her school and that are in her class and such. We will get the random kid ringing the doorbell frequently now just to say, hey, is she home to play?
I mean,
and then they go out and they ride their bikes. Because you can have an idea. Like, I swear, back in the day, I would go out with my friends in the neighborhood and my parents had no idea where we were.
Zero.
Like, there's no clue. They had no clue what we were doing. And I want to be a little bit more on top of that as a parent. But you need to let them have a little bit of freedom and know where they go. And as long as you have a kid that you can trust, you know, it's an important part of childhood. But yeah, we get the doorbell ring and it's awesome.
I mean, that has to be the dream, right? Like,
yes,
it is, because we all think that our childhood, and hopefully everyone thinks this, is exactly what you want your kid's childhood to be in many ways. And now it kind of feels almost impossible in some areas, especially with how connected everything is and how they acquire information and all that type of stuff. But just the ability to do that is seems different than how a lot of people have it these days. Yeah, I mean, I can't judge, now that I'm a parent, how anyone else has their parenting styles or any of that. But man, I wish there was an easy way that like someone opened just a Blockbuster. I'm sure you've talked about this with other people. And like that is the memory that kids have on Friday evenings, Saturdays, is, oh, I walk in, hopefully they have my movie ready or the video game, and you have to look behind the plastic boxes and all that type of stuff. And are my parents going to allow me to buy a Magic the Gathering pack this weekend if I plead enough, if I, you know, rake the leaves, if I do all this stuff? Yeah. And I mean, I wonder what like the equal of that is now for kids. But it was great. It was great. I loved it. I
mean, my daughter's into some, like, the squishies are all the rage right now. Just things that you just
squish,
like, literally squish. Like she literally gave me, she wants me to have.
We did have
at my desk.
Beanie Babies, so I guess that's like,
it's a little bit like that. But like right now, like this is looks like a piece of bread or like a
roll.
Right. And it's a squishy that she gave me to just cut. And it's just like a, you know, little stress reliever. I hope that's not why kids are collecting them the way that they are, is to relieve stress. But it wouldn't shock me if that's the case, because they're just inundated with so much.
Not to make this the entire show, but did you ever consider, when you finally showed her and, you know, your other kids like movies and TV shows, did you ever think about going back to the start, like getting a CRT TV that's like 4x3 and like getting the actual VCR tapes and like starting with the early Disney movies and that stuff? Versus,
I've not, but that's I mean, it's so easy to just click the button.
Versus like hitting Disney Plus and boom, there's whatever movie that you ever want. Like actually having her have to like pick out the one on the shelf, and that's what we're watching today. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but it would be cool. It'd be a fun.
It's a lot more work.
Speaking of the Blockbuster thing, did you know? And look, I understand if you're, you know, not a millennial, then you can fast forward to probably, you know, 3 more minutes. But did you know that, so I'm assuming you played like Lion King on Sega back in the day, or like SNES.
Like the most difficult game ever.
Thank you. Okay. Did you know they made it that difficult on purpose because they didn't want people to rent the game for over the weekend and beat it and then not purchase it? Just sickening stuff.
How disgusting.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, again, just going, and now they're like these, I don't know if you get targeted on Instagram and all this stuff, but when I'm just doom scrolling every once in a while, I get these reels that are AI generated, and it's like a Saturday morning in 1998, and it's like wintry and like, you know, it's Chips Ahoy everywhere. And it's like, again, exactly what your home that you grew up in looks like. I'm like, and then it just makes me think of it for an hour. Anyways, Toys R Us was an experience like that too.
Oh yeah.
Where you had to like pull the slip from the aisle and bring it to the kiosk.
My gosh.
I think I've told you this story before, but I mean, my biggest Toys R Us memory was right when Power Rangers came out. And you know, the badge thing that they have, that they go like, it's morphin' time. And then they turn into it.
Of course.
Anyways, I don't know what age, 7 or 8 at that time, and walking up and down the aisles, and I saw the thing. I saw the belt or the badge or whatever. And I was so scared to actually touch it because I didn't want the responsibility that I would actually turn into the Power Ranger, that for the next, 10 minutes, I just walked up and down the aisle, just like giving it the side eye and looking at it, be like, okay, and do I have the courage to do this? And I didn't. I never bought it.
Oh, that's incredible. That is incredible.
Yes.
Do you?
I thought I'd have to save the world if I bought it.
I mean, look, that's the way that like my son's 3.5 and he's starting to get into like, he's like, his whole personality is Spider-Man at this point. Right. And so like, and it's fantastic. It's so much fun. But like, he has that mentality too. We have like a little play kitchen in our playroom, and he took a pot and a lid to the pot, and that's his Captain America shield, you know, like,
love it. Like
that kind of stuff. And like, I could see him having that kind of reaction. But yeah, man, I'm a big nostalgia guy as well.
Feel very fortunate that we loved our childhood so much that
exactly.
We look back on those things fondly.
I think that, yeah, you can't take that for granted, for sure.
And then now that's all we want to do for our kids.
I know. Christmas time, especially. When was your son born again?
The week before Christmas. So this one would be like the real. This will be like a real. And then the next one, all that stuff.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk some football, I guess.
I guess so.
I guess we can do that.
We have to.
We're in the thick of it right now in terms of camp news and such. And I don't know, I personally, I'd love to hear your take on this too. You know, this is just a subjective thing, but I don't really remember a year where we've seen, and maybe it's just like the way that the wide receiver class was this year in general, and that it was like kind of, you know, pick your own flavor, you know, whatever you like. You know, there's a lot of flatness to it aside from some of the top guys. But it seems like we're just seeing like so much positive hype and favorable hype for so many guys that we know the hit rates of even day 2 wideouts and then into day 3, of course, you know, and we're seeing all of this like just camp hype with these guys. So my question is like, are you feeling that way a little bit? And then my bigger question that I really want to hear your thoughts on is like how you stay level-headed with all the camp news and how you sift through it.
I think there's so much of it this year, JJ, that I haven't even gotten all of it like into my brain and seen it all. Yeah. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. We'll check in at the end of the season to find out. This kind of goes not just with training camp, but also if you want to use it for the NFL draft cycle. I think you're kind of the same way where you can't believe everyone. You know, you kind of have to pick out which people you actually trust. And with a lot of this stuff, that is beat writers. And while they all might report and post the same things, doing this for like a decade, there are like certain ones that you actually trust. Right. And I don't want to name them all.
Sure.
Or not name enough, but like Nick Underhill with the New Orleans Saints is one, Jordan Rodon with the Giants, Joe Person with the Panthers. Like you can tell that these people have done it long enough that they can tell when something looks different, when something pops, when they have, you know, the coach's ear on certain things. And so it's kind of like the drumbeat with those people as it continues, the more and more I buy into it. But I'm like you. It's when these videos are kind of aggregated and posted, you don't even have time to like look, okay, is this 1-on-1s? Is it 7-on-7? Is it 11-on-11? Is it versus a guy in the practice squad that might not even make the roster and all that type of stuff? So I think I read into actual preseason games and the pecking order and the divvy of touches and that more than anything else in the preseason. Yeah,
I'm with you. And like there's some stuff, like again, the reporters that have been right in the past that seem to have a real like, you know, ear within the organization and such. Like one that really caught my eye over the last 2 weeks or so is Ben Standig and the way that he's been talking about the Washington backfield, right? Where, you know, I was heavier on Rachaad White, thinking that it would go that direction. And I still have my hesitations in saying like, oh no, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt can certainly be an 8 to 10% target share player. I don't know if that's the case because he really wasn't that in college either. Like he was never, a spectacular.
No, I think he had 7 catches during his entire career in college.
Right. And so like, I definitely have had, and he wasn't a young prospect either. This isn't like a Braylon Allen situation where maybe it's learned a little bit, just through that, natural progression. But it is an eye-opening thing whenever like a beat reporter who's generally on point is saying something that makes you question your priors a little bit. I think you should be doing that.
100%. That's a fascinating backfield. And to zoom out with it, I think we can get so focused on, well, the passing game and the receptions, are they going to go to one player? Right. That's not true. All that we need from Bill is to just not be a total liability in that area, to have like some level of trust to stay in on a certain number of those situations. And that's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
I actually have been taking a lot of Bill this year for a number of reasons. Like, you can turn whatever underlying metrics you want into a positive for any player. Like there's enough of a sample that these guys played that you can dig through something of a 4-game or 100 snaps that look great for, again, every single player that we want to draft this year. But for Bill, like I remember, I think it might have been Standick or JP Finley, both great on the Washington beat. Talked to Josh Connerly, the now second-year right tackle, and him saying, hey, in this offense, we're going to lead more and more into wide zone. And then you read that I think it was fantasy points last year, the Commanders were best in the NFL in outside zone at 6.1 yards per carry. And then, again, Bill led the NFL in yards per carry in outside zone at 7.6. Now, that might not be a large sample. It might just be really skewed from that one Chargers game where he was fantastic. And at the same time, I think he's going much later this year than he did last year when he kind of became a meme of the entire thing. So it's not, I think, out of the realm of possibility that, the second-year, 7th-round rookie, who had some moments last year but couldn't carry it for 17 games, just has more experience. The game has slowed down for him and has earned more trust kind of on the team going into year 2. Yeah,
agreed. And I think that archetype of running back in general is one that I traditionally have like arbitraged a little bit, where if it's not a 10% plus target share and you're looking at an early down runner, and there's obviously, there's more that he could build off of that. But like, I don't necessarily want to pay a premium on like a Dobbins type if he goes earlier in a draft or something like that versus just waiting a couple rounds and going like Jordan Mason or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt or what have you,
I'm a little nervous that the Commanders' backfield turns into the Minnesota Vikings backfield.
I think
too.
It could easily,
easily. And as much as we have seen the Vikings backfields, or I should say team, score top 6, top 8, and we love KOC and all that stuff, like in the end, their backfields just don't matter. They pass a lot near the red zone, and the running backs don't get a lot of receptions, and they divvy it up like perfectly for, again, these guys to kind of be irrelevant. And I'm a bit nervous that as much as we like to battle for 3 months during the summer, in the end, no one wins.
Yeah.
With backfields like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been talking ambiguous backfields from a strategy perspective for like a decade now. Right. And people seem to think that it's a better way to attack backfields than, taking standalone backs that have no running back competition ADP wise in the middle rounds. Like there's hard data that says that you would rather go after a middle round running back who has other teammates in the middle rounds being drafted around him than a standalone middle round running back with no teammates. And the reason for that is likely situation, right? Because if there's multiple running backs being drafted in the middle rounds, it means the situation's probably pretty good. Whereas you have to ask yourself, why is this running back being drafted isolated with no other teammates being drafted near him? Why isn't he being drafted higher? If he's clearly looking like the bell cow in that backfield, is probably situation based. So I'm all about going after these ambiguous backfields, but I think there's this notion out there that there's a really, really high hit rate of players emerging from ambiguous backfields, but it's the opposite. It's just that it's better odds, but a lot of these backfields just maintain, ambiguity, and they have a split backfield for most of the season.
First of all, I think you chose your packaging correctly, because late round fantasy football rolls off the tongue a lot better than ambiguous backfield fantasy football.
Yeah, you're right.
So
you're definitely right.
Good job with that choice.
Yes.
And I was looking at some overperformers last year based on where guys were drafted. Like Javonte kind of goes against a little bit what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
In that he was drafted as running back 38 last year, finished as running back 12 in points per game. Mm-hmm. Travis Etienne was running back 33, finished as running back 13 in points per game. But, you can kind of dive into why those things were the case pretty easily in that, like,
but
Javonte was coming off a down season owning the backfield in Denver, and we weren't really drafting any of the other guys in that backfield. And then, Travis Etienne was also coming off an injured season that was down. And then, we get a little hyped with, again, a large portion of the summer was Tank Bigsby and also Bachel Tootin. And then it's kind of like a 3-person.
And Jaden Blue, if we're being, like he had a pretty decent ADP, and it wasn't like so far off of Javonte, But yeah, I agree. I do think, looping back to the news item stuff, I do think that understanding which beats you can trust and not just like be wary of the aggregators too. I think that's important. If when they're
can I say one more thing on this too?
Yeah.
Like, I think the other difficult aspect of this time of year is figuring out which injuries matter and which ones don't. And that goes all through the summer too. Like, we get hyper fixated on certain injuries like Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
And every report and every sentence, I mean, I would even say sentences get aggregated.
Yes.
That maybe the person who's writing them didn't want us to read into the exact words that were used precisely.
Yeah.
But then, I don't think anyone talked about the Sam Laporta injury as much. And like, now both are fine, like, again, listing all the Neighbor stuff in the timeline was awful, but then it just switched on like a Sunday, and Ronan and company all said, oh, actually, he's not even going to start the preseason on the PUP list.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
This shocked my world. And that is one of those cases where, for us trying to send information to the people out there, I feel like we were in the right to kind of interpret, again, the timeline, the cleanup surgery, all that type of stuff, and share a warning. But then as soon as, he's actually practicing and he's practicing at nearly top speed, you then have to totally change your tune.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a double standard or talking out of both sides of your mouth. But at the same time, like, I'm trying to update my opinion, and yes, it's in real time. And then now I hope you don't go watch this video I made 7 weeks ago and now just do the one that I did 7 hours ago instead.
I mean, but I think it's important though to like establish that with your audience too, of like, I mean, they know that with you at this point, that we get we get more information, we change our priors, we change the way that we feel about players and situations and such. That's what scientists do. That's what smart people do. You're open to changing your opinion, and you unfortunately on social media see people doing the opposite all the time, and it just gets obnoxious. And I don't think, I think that people listen to you and Hayden hopefully are listening to me because, we're just being truthful. It's just the honest take that we have at that moment, and we can only work with what we're working with. But speaking of Neighbors, like, yes, I was cautious, of course. We had no idea what the heck was going on, and I didn't want to say, draft him where you would draft Neighbors, because obviously there's this knee issue. But where are you at with Neighbors? Because it's obviously impacted his ADP. Where are you at with Neighbors? Are you in or are you out where he's now, let's say like mid-third, if he goes mid-third, or early third?
Yeah, and even on Yahoo, he's still late third.
Yeah.
So there's still some value to be had there. Yeah. Previously, when we didn't know what the injury timeline was going to be, he was going in, I think, the most exciting area of wide receivers in the draft.
Exactly.
It was that Jalen Waddle, Emeka Egbuka, Zay Flowers, Ladd McConkey, Garrett Wilson, whatever order you want to do, even like Terry McLaurin and all that stuff. And so it's almost easier for me to draft him now than it was then, even though that price was later.
Yes.
Because I was so excited about all those other names and could easily tell myself the story of, it's all positive buzz, and this is why they can be this year's XYZ.
Yeah.
Versus Malik Neighbors, he's injured. We don't know the timeline. And now that he's not, even if he's going earlier, I'm clicking his name much more often.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of deciding how to rank him versus Rashee Rice, for example.
Yep.
And, Rashee Rice has just been unbelievable whenever he's on the field, and he's kind of doing his rehab in real time. Goes back to the clips thing that you said at the top. Not so great so far, but again, we have to realize he was in freaking jail and rehabbing in jail.
It doesn't seem real still.
I mean, it's... But yeah, I mean, Malik Neighbors is legit one of the top 5 to 7 wide receiver talents in the league. And getting that in the middle of round 3, the early part of round 3, the late part of round 3 is exceptional. I know you can say like Jackson Dart had 48%, something like that, of his production. Fantasy points last year were on the ground or in the air. I can't remember what the other side of it is. Anyways, I mean, he only played 2 quarters with Malik Neighbors. Yeah. So like, how much can we lean on? well, that's the only way he can generate fantasy points. I would hope and I would assume that, the more Malik Neighbors is out there, the more passing points Jackson Dart's going to have on top of that.
Yeah, I would imagine. I've kind of drawn the line with Neighbors at like Drake London. Like I'm taking London over Neighbors,
Of course.
And
but then that means you're taking him over Nico and Pickens and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith.
I'm at least considering him. And you know what I mean? Like it's not like a ranking him that way. I think I still have him below a Nico, who I think is just a stud player in general.
Yep.
And then, Rashee Rice is one of the more difficult things I think for fantasy analysts, because I don't think he's nearly as good as he is in fantasy in real life, as an actual player, like very limited player versus what he does for fantasy, right? But we're playing the game, in the end, like we're trying to win here, and we know how good he is whenever, he's active and playing. And so like, I do think that's the range where, like I'll do the thing if I'm in like the 102, in best ball or something, like late second round in the 211, I'll click Neighbors to catch up a little bit, because I'm with you. I know this is more of a best ball take, but like I wasn't taking him much in the fourth round, which was a mistake in hindsight, obviously, because he's going a lot higher now. But I also see that like third and fourth round range is very flat anyway. So I don't think the opportunity cost, like if you're missing out on Chris Olave, it's like a Chris Olave versus Luther Burden type question. Like there's a very real scenario where Luther Burden outscores Chris Olave this year. There's a very real scenario where Tedero McMillan goes bonkers on a 30% target share in that offense or something, and he outscores a guy like Olave. And so I'm not like as upset about like playing it cautious, because I think it was flat there. We just, if you haven't been drafting Neighbors, you just really need to hope that you can continue to get him at like the 2-3 turn instead of him going at the 1-2 turn or something like that, where a healthy Neighbors probably would go,
And I doubt he climbs much more than like that 302, 303 area, because I highly doubt he plays a single snap in preseason.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the practice stuff can only go so far versus someone seeing, a 40-yard catch and run touchdown. And if that happens, then, we're back into round 2, baby.
Yeah.
But, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think like that's where the narrative plays out, where he's going to still settle in the third round. And like the Olave, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith area is where we're going to wind up with Malik Neighbors for sure.
Another big thing happened this past week. Ricky Pearsall out for the year, and once again, doesn't help me. That's for sure, because I was into Pearsall and what he could do this season given situation. I thought he was. I think Pearsall's a good player. I thought that he, looked good last year, had good peripherals last year, but he's now done for the year. So the obvious question is, we have this aged Deebo Samuel coming in, and then we have Deshaun Stribling, one of the more controversial rookies in this year's class, who is going to more than likely get opportunity. Where are you at with those wide receivers? Yeah,
just my final comment on Ricky Pearsall, because, the day before that came out, Harmon and I and Hayden recorded a 30-year wide receiver video where we asked, are we going to be the boys who cried wolf again on Ricky Pearsall? And then we're
literally,
we're telling people to do it again, and then he gets injured. Well, he didn't get injured. He just, has to have surgery on what he should have had surgery on before. Anyways, I'm not allowed to talk about Ricky Pearsall until August 10th next year. I put I think it's a good idea. Cap on that. Yeah. Okay, on Stribling, I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
If it was, let's say, any other draft class that just came into the league, and the 33rd overall pick was thrusted into a possible starting job, and his competition was a 32 and 30-year-old wide receiver, like the fantasy football bubble would be losing their ADP minds.
Yeah.
And they're not on Deshaun Stribling.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to, as soon as he was drafted 33rd overall and shocked many people because of that. I mean, we even posted a dynasty rankings video, and I was stunned to see he was like the 207 or the 205. And I don't want to like talk over you if you had him in that area, but like, I just didn't understand how like Nick Singleton was going at the 12th pick of the first round over someone like Deshaun Stribling. And to me, that was like real anchoring bias of, well, this guy was productive in his first stop and it's all declined since then with Nicholas Singleton in his first year at Penn State versus Stribling, who was an older prospect and traveled a bit. And at the same time, man, I don't want to say let's just implicitly trust Kyle Shanahan, but at least the dude's going to get an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when Brandon Ayuk first got into the league, and he was even a late first round pick. And the reason he rode the bench for so long was because, well, now maybe we see it with the attitude and his lack of blocking effort and all that type of stuff. I thought Stribling has a chance of being like the best blocker coming out of school, coming into this class. And so if he like checks these boxes, and who knows, because he's injured on the sideline at this point, I think I'm just way more optimistic on Deshaun Stribling than a lot of other people are.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. Analytically doesn't look great. There's,
right.
Even if you just look at like something as basic as like career yards per route run, it's like well below any sort of threshold that you would want for a typical guy to hit. Zap model definitely didn't love him. Like, I was actually looking back because Cyrus Allen's another guy who's getting a ton of love right now, right? And I didn't actually do any profile write-up for Allen because he didn't get invited to the combine. He was a snub, right? And I've kind of limited myself for the guide every year to only write up players who get invited to the combine. And so I actually still had Cyrus Allen ranked as a top 4 round rookie pick after the draft was over. You can go look in the prospect guide, like you can see his name there. But I gave his score, but there's no profile write-up for him. So I didn't do the same kind of deep dive with Cyrus Allen until, basically June, because there's a lot of stuff going on in May right after the draft is over. And I actually think that like Cyrus Allen's analytical profile, if you were to just look at it straight up versus Deshaun Stribling's, is better than Stribling's. Like there's better age adjusted production. You can at least like very clearly see how he was deployed in college. A lot of slot work for Allen, but he got down the field, and you can see how that would mesh with Kansas City. Now, when Stribling came out, I was trying to be a voice of reason in like the middle, shocker, but trying to not throw out, I'm trying to like think through this and not wanting to like take a crazy stand on something that I just don't think that we should take crazy stands on. I feel like you're about to say something here about me here.
No. It's just, on the fence, Zachariason,
That's what they call me, right?
We know him, we love him.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just kidding.
But like I was doing a lot of analysis on like reaches, right? Like, this is objective data. This is not like some subjective, like I'm trying to like feel the vibes of what the community was saying pre and post draft. No, I'm looking at hard data of mock draft aggregate data and saying, when we see reaches like this with the Stribling, the outcomes are generally pretty poor. It's not great. And when you see the opposite happen, where a guy falls in the draft, that's also not that great either, generally, because that's telling us that multiple teams are passing on. Like Troy Franklin's a really good example of that, where it's like he was a mock draft second round pick, and then he goes day 3, and all of a sudden, I think that at this point in his career, we're not sitting there being like eager to draft Troy Franklin, right? So with Deshaun Stribling, all of the reach stuff was really unfavorable for him. The analytical profile was really unfavorable for him. And I feel very similar to like because this wide receiver class, in my opinion, was just not very good. And there were just a lot of guys instead of like a lot of like guys that you could really latch onto and say, oh, this guy's going to be a really like I loved Luther Burden last year in round 2. There was no round 2 or round 3 player that like had this like can't miss profile. And as a result of that, when I did my rookie rankings, it's just like so much flatness. It's just choose what you kind of want to do, and you can read the profiles that I wrote up and kind of go from there. As I've been thinking about Stribling, though, the more I've thought about him, the more I've bought into this idea. Number one, I agree. Him being a late round pick the way that he is, why would you not take a chance? Right. Regardless of profile, regardless of what. But you can look at you can see some of the physicality even in the numbers with his profile, because he did have some good yak ability, and that yak ability is something that we've seen Shanahan's system receivers thrive in, right? And I think that's what's been the turning point for me over the last month with Stribling. I was kind of starting to draft him before the Pearsall stuff started to happen. And so there's like regrets on one end for me of like, going back to what we were talking about earlier about changing opinions and stuff. I wish I was a little bit higher on him back in May. Wish I maybe got more in rookie. I got some, but more in rookie drafts. But now I think he's actually a pretty good double-digit round dart throw, where go after it, see what happens. If you're wrong, not a big deal. I probably wouldn't go crazy in Dynasty just because the backbone of the analytical profile is not fantastic. But guys like this, even if he has like an okay enough rookie season, you can see that value increase year over year still.
Number of things to hit on there. So often we hear the term upside talked about with just best ball. And it's like, you can take the big swings because the best score happens and is given to you every single week. When in reality, I think like swing for upside in your redraft leagues is equally as important, if not more important.
I think it's more. Yeah.
Right. Because think about the end of your season, how much roster turnover there is. Mm-hmm. You also like don't get zeros in redraft. You can put someone in instead. So yeah, Stribling to me is a great shout. And it's for a lot of the reasons that you outlined. There were so many occasions where it felt like two defenders had to like be on his back for him to go to the ground. It's exactly what you mentioned with the yards of the catch stuff. And then his final season played at Ole Miss, where it's kind of the same thing with the Trey Harris profile, and that was with Jackson Dart, know, and I know Trinidad Chambliss is, he might not go exactly where Jackson Dart did in the draft. Anyways, but that one, everything's like so on a string and so in a line that you don't get like the full route profile or even that many in breakers on top of it. And I think like that can kind of distort some, not just stats, but eye tests and all that type of stuff. So I'm definitely not sitting here and saying that Deshaun Stribling is a flawless prospect.
Yeah.
But like you said, everyone that was drafted after round 1 had flaws. It just felt like those flaws were more accepting than Deshaun Stribling's. At the same time, like I'd Ricky Pearsall as wide receiver 35 prior to his injury, Stribling at wide receiver 60.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to move Stribling up to wide receiver 35. Right. I'm probably going to move him up 10 spots. So around like wide receiver 50. And now that's battling like Xavier Worthy, for example.
Yep.
And this might be an outlandish statement, and we'll talk about it maybe later, but I want to take the game on Deshaun Stribling over Xavier Worthy this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can get behind it too. I think that's at least like the grouping and the tier. It's like, there's other upside bets, but those upside bets are also very questionable because they haven't really shown anything up until this point. Are you Debo over Stribling, or are you fading Debo? Is it like, I ask, how do you see him fit in? We've obviously seen it because
we've seen it.
He was there,
right.
but he's not the same Debo that he was 5 years ago.
Yeah, admittedly, I was actually a big Debo guy this time last year, and I felt really good through the first 5 games.
Yeah.
I mean, he opened the season in half PPR as wide receiver 5, 21, 12, and 6.
Yeah.
And for the opening 5 games. And then I think he missed a contest and then just went downhill from there. I have him like 8 or 10 spots after Stribling here.
Okay.
It might be one of those cases that we see, again, the peak of Debo in the first 5 weeks. The veteran gets most of the work. You feel like it's going really well. And then once the bye week hits or as the season goes along, that's when, like the Luther Burden stuff last year, that's when, the rookie emerges and settles in and they figure out exactly how to use them and in what situations and all that type of stuff. So just overall, though, if we just keep moving all of these 49ers down, other than CMC, like what is that telling us? Like I've moved Mike Evans down in the last couple weeks too.
Because the injury, right?
Like what? That's not a good thing for a team. And at the same time, you can say, well, they all got injured last year and still look where Brock Purdy played and finished on a weekly basis. And obviously I was a huge advocate for CMC last summer. But one of the main reasons why I was drafting so many 49ers last year is because they had the easiest schedule across the league. Like the easiest schedule. That's not the case this year, right? No. So they'll probably run into a lot more difficult matchups with maybe weakened talent. And I still think Shanny is awesome, but it's going to be tougher this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I think that's a good take.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
ChatGPT can do more than answer questions. It can help you get real work done. ChatGPT Work is built for bigger projects with multiple steps. You bring the goal along with the information it needs, like briefs, notes, files, feedback, calendars, data sets, or project plans. Then, ChatGPT can help turn all of that into something useful. An analysis, a tracker, a deck outline, a prototype, or a workflow you can keep shaping. It can also use approved apps, connected tools, files, and browser context to help move the work forward. And you stay in control. You give direction, review drafts, approve actions, redirect the work, and choose the final output. So you spend less time sorting through busy work and more time making progress on the work that matters. Put ChatGPT to work on your most ambitious ideas and projects. Get started at ChatGPT.com by selecting Work Mode. Available on Plus and Pro plans.
We also saw Stefon Diggs become a Washington Commander, which wasn't really a shock. Reading between the lines, this was more than likely coming. But where are you at with him? I think this is one of the more interesting cases in fantasy right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off a 1,000-yard season that he barely played half the offensive snaps with the New England Patriots. And that was when he was also rehabbing a torn ACL all offseason. And he doesn't have any of those things now. Like, he's healthy coming into this year.
Yeah.
I'm excited for what this Washington Commanders offense can be. Everything we're hearing about David Blau in comparison to Cliff Kingsbury are exact opposites.
Exactly.
Like, Cliff and Jaden Daniels had an awesome first season together. But then, as you know, like, Terry played 74% of snaps as like a left wide receiver.
Yeah.
They were last in the league in motion or close to it and play action. And so everything got stale in year 2. And it just seems like they want to be a bit more traditional. Like, I hope they don't totally lean into that, because I think that'll, mask some of the great things that Jaden Daniels does. But, I mean, that's great news for someone like Stefon Diggs, who's like an outside to inside type player. Some of the best work that he did with the Houston Texans was in the slot. The same thing with the Patriots, all that type of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to draft Stefon Diggs. I think I have him as wide receiver 40 now. But what it made me do was actually drop, because I was super high on Terry, like so high on Terry.
Yeah, I was too.
And it made me drop him like 2 or 3 wide receiver spots. But even in that area, man, like every ranking matters.
Yes.
In that, 5th round
I feel like
right
I jumble those wide receivers up every single week when I'm updating rankings. It's like, I can see the case for, T-Mac or whatever. But yeah, I love Diggs in Washington, man, because last year in New England, like you said, he barely played, like he didn't play a normal, complement of snaps. And he was like ranked 70th-ish, 60 to 70th in route share, like a 70% route share across the season. And then when you would see, remember that game against Buffalo where he just went nuts, and it was a game where they finally unleashed him and used him on a high number of routes, and he just went absolutely bonkers because his targets per route run rate was over 24%. Depending on your source, he was top 10 in yards per route run. I mean, like, he was great when he was running those routes. And I think the difference with New England and Washington, number one, you nailed it, the ACL recovery, which I feel like no one's talking about right now. And that could play a role as to why he wasn't playing as much. But number two, I would argue that New England at least had some interesting pieces, other wide receivers that certainly weren't like established by any means, but could at least, like you can use Pop Douglas in the slot, and you could, throw Kyle Williams out there on the outside to stretch the field, or Kayshon Boutte, or whatever the case may be. And I look at Washington right now, and there is such inexperience / question marks outside of Terry McLaurin that I don't think we're going to have the questions about route share with Stefon Diggs there. And imagine a world where he's running 80-90% of the teams, a route on 90% of the team's dropbacks. I mean, he could go nuts. Like, I have him wide receiver 39 right now, and I think the market, I would anticipate ADP at least being slow to catch up, number one. But number two, I don't think he's going to end up in home leagues and stuff and season-long leagues. I don't think he'll end up going that high. I'm drafting him over someone like Cortland Sutton right now. I think that it's a more intriguing situation, and there's less competition, and I don't, they're not that far off in age, and really Diggs' peripherals have been better than what we've seen from Sutton. Sutton to me has just been the perennial guy who doesn't have crazy upside. He's just fine, whatever. But Diggs, I can see a scenario where he does inch into wide receiver 2 range in full PPR formats.
I just made that change. I had Sutton one spot above, and so I just moved Diggs above.
Now we're
him.
both at wide receiver 39. That's perfect.
Yeah, but then it gets to the interesting territory of, the 2 names I have ahead of Diggs right now are Jordan Addison and Jordan Tyson, right?
Yeah.
And you get the Addison stuff with Kyler Murray, the downfield passing, getting back to KOC, Jordan Tyson, hey, what is he with Tyler Shough? What is he with Kellen Moore, who, fastest pace in the league, most plays in the league? That's really enticing. But then behind him, it's now Sutton and Chris Godwin, among some other names.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the veterans to discuss. Yeah, I just went through all the snap counts last season for the Patriots. Mac Hollins played more snaps than Stefon Diggs in every single game.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot. I like every time I talk about the Patriots, I always forget about Mac Hollins being part of that.
Every single game.
Yeah.
Every game.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect spot. Now, I was also drafting a ton of Chig. Like I was.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I had a ton of Diggs.
He was my most drafted player at points this summer.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to myself into, hey, can he be David Blau, Sam Laporta? They're around the same size. I thought Ben Johnson did an awesome job of kind of masking some of the size and blocking deficiencies of Sam Laporta a little bit. And, you know, I think David Blau was the practice squad quarterback during that time on the Lions when Sam Laporta finished as the tight end 1. I could have my timelines wrong, but something like that. Yeah. And it still might happen. It's just not as possible for Chig to now be, you know, second in targets on a team, which is like, when we talk about tight end breakouts, so often it's because those guys become like the funneled second pass catcher on their roster. It just doesn't seem like that's the pathway.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I had him as a dart throw in the guide this year, and I don't think that I can necessarily have that anymore. I mean, it's funny because I have McLaurin as a target, and I'm going to have Diggs as a target, and clearly there's, you know, a theme going on there. Speaking of players that are being hyped right now, I guess that was a pretty bad segue because we weren't really talking about hype players.
Ain't that the most vanilla segue I've ever heard in my life?
Let's talk about Luther Burden.
Yes.
Are you buying the coach speak? Like where are you at with this trio of players in Chicago?
Well, I love them all, and so that makes it difficult because, you know, the Twitter fights that happen all summer, you have to pick one.
I know. You have to.
I like them all, JJ.
If you don't, are you even a fantasy analyst?
I think I have them all ranked above ADP, but that doesn't mean I have them ranked higher than any other analyst. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Like, you know, Harmon and Hayden on the show this week or last week are now ranking Rome Odunze ahead straight up of Luther Burden. And I can't go there. At the same time, I can say, hey, Rome, so many of the downfield catches and every single like 50-50 situation, it was like fingertips. The ball just went off. The variance wasn't on his side. I think his body control's awesome. Out routes, the downfield routes, all that type of stuff. That if that hits and he's on the right side of variance this year, then boom, it's easy to see.
Yeah.
At the same time, I look at it and Luther Burden, his ADOT's like half that.
Yep.
And so often we think, oh, well, the guy's running the big downfield posts and 9 routes. That's what we want in fantasy football. Like those big explosive plays, that's what we're chasing. No, man, we want the gimmies.
Yeah, we want the scammers, man.
Yes, and especially we want the gimmies to the guys that are like generational with the ball in their hands.
Exactly.
And that's Luther Burden. And we also want that when it's tied to a coach that does probably more than anyone else a better job of manufacturing space for the players that are awesome with the ball in their hands. And that is Luther Burden. So like, I totally get that maybe we're drafting him at his quote unquote, you know, top price. And that's the middle of 5th round on Yahoo. And I know in best ball, that's the middle of the 4th round, basically.
Yeah.
But when I'm on the clock, man, I'll still click it every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a price tag. And we'll talk about some wide receivers later on that like, yeah, I like him well above everyone else in this tier. For him, I just want pieces. I just want options.
Yeah.
Because he is one of these players that has such stark and standout positives and where he wins elements to his game on a coach that maximizes those.
Exactly.
That if he just improves the other aspects to him, like some of the bad drops last year or these digs and end breakers and winning in one-on-one isolation routes that he grew into last year. And like, hey, if Caleb Williams doesn't become just a totally errant passer on these 15, 20 plus yards throws on the field and becomes like average at that, then we could be looking at like a awesome player here.
So the Zap model loved Luther Burden. Like I even wrote in his profile when it came out that if the Zap model had a baby, he'd probably name it Luther. Like it was crazy. Like his score even right now, I think was...
I pitched it to my wife. She said no.
Yeah. There you go. Like even now I updated the model scores and stuff, and like his score is ahead of, despite draft capital, which is obviously going to get weight, is still ahead of like T-Mac and Ibuka, and it likes T-Mac and Ibuka. Like it just looked at Burden as like, oh, you got like a 99th percentile breakout score, and like things just look so good analytically. Admittedly, I wish I was even more aggressive with him last year, of course, just given where things are at right now. But that's the thing with me is that like there's this backbone of him. This isn't like a random day 3 wide. This isn't like if Cyrus Allen comes through in 2026 with a 2.5 yards per hour run rate. This is a player that was really, really good as a prospect and was, I think, underdrafted because of maybe some off the field concerns.
His final year at Missouri was not consistent at all.
Right. And I found, and I talked about this when he came out, like I've found that peak season is much more important than final season. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the same way. His peak season was much different than his final season. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, was another one. But
Teddy McMillan was like that too.
Yeah. Right. And so like I think that's an important, like if you see it in college at that kind of peak, it's at a younger age, it's very, very important. And so I do remember, and I said this on a show last night, and chat was spamming me nasty things because it's kind of an insane take. But every like January, February, Harmon and I do a lot of texting about wide receiver prospects. Of course, he's interested to see what the Zap model might be saying, and I'm interested to see what he's charting. And I remember pulling up initial comps for Luther Burden. This is before draft capital was really inserted, and he was more of like a mid first round pick when, like there weren't, like he started dropping, as the draft process went. And one of his comps, and it didn't end up as one of his comps because I partially didn't want to have to explain it because comps are loose and it's just more of like an archetype thing for me. And like, like how guys matched up size wise, analytically, and so on. One of his comps was Malik Neighbors. And it's not to say that like I think that's, but I do think that Burden is in, if you were to really widen that archetype of player, because Neighbors and Jamar Chase are in that archetype. DJ Moore is like on the lower end of that archetype of like of really good players, like on the lower. Brandon Ayuk kind of in that as well, like peak Ayuk. I think Luther Burden can make a genuine impact. I'm not saying he's Malik Neighbors. That's why I hesitate even bringing this up. But I do think there is this ceiling that is just just not talked about nearly enough. And like you said, there's this merging of like what he does well and what Ben Johnson does well, which is why I think we're hearing the quotes of Ben Johnson talking about Luther Burden like it's his son.
Yeah. I mean, it's an ideal fit. Yeah. It really was. Like if you had any concerns, which some of them were probably warranted, of the tail off, didn't, because he was a lot of a slot player. I wouldn't call him a slot only player in college, but a lot of a slot player. Yeah. And so, I mean, I understood the questions out there. I just loved him. Like just when people move differently, it just like gravitates because we watch so many of these players and they just like look the same. And I'm sure in the Zap model, like kind of look the same. And he did not look the same. You mean like this year's wide receiver class? Just everyone's just completely mid. Yeah. Everyone's just Jeremy Gallen all over and over and over.
Exactly. I'm like, well, look at this class. I'm just like, can someone just stand out, please? Like, I love
do
Carnell
something,
Tate.
please.
Yeah. Like, I like the big four in this class, up to Concepcion. Like, I think all four of them are really good. But then after that, I was just like, man, I just need a little bit more from, Boston was fine and Cooper was fine, but a lot of those like mid day 2, day 3 guys was it's just the same kind of thing over and over again, man, Now, with all that said about Burden, I also think Luther Burden is on the fast track to being the first or second or third best tight end in the NFL. And especially when they go heavier personnel looks, I understand that a lot of it's going to be with 2 wide receivers still in the field. Right.
But, and again, whatever underlying metrics you want to find, you can find them, especially in certain personnel groupings. But whenever they did play 3 tight ends, and, they go out and draft a pure blocker, basically, I think, in Sam Roush. Yeah. So maybe they'll do more of that this year. His yards per route run were it was 4.66 and then had 53% of the receiving market share during that time.
Crazy.
When they were in 13 personnel looks.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he is, and I know this is used frequently. I'm going to do it again here. He moves like a wide receiver in a tight end's body, and he can be the focal point of a passing game. Now, do I think that anyone's going to be like the Amon-Ra St. Brown to a Ben Johnson passing attack in this one? I don't necessarily think so, but, being a true difference maker at tight end, and tell me if your numbers say this differently, can be easier than being like a true difference maker at wide receiver if we're talking like round 3, round 4 picks.
Yeah.
So, I'm drafting a lot of Colson Loveland too. I'm not drafting them like on the same team though.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
What about you?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I like, if I were to order them in the exposure I will get, it's like Burden is the 1 and then the other 2 are like, 2A, 2B. You know, and part of it with Loveland is just the position he's playing from like a game theory perspective and wanting to take on that opportunity cost for a tight end. I'm certainly not fading. And I still think that Odunze goes a little bit later. Like the one thing that I do think that people should understand is that, you know, when I'm ranking, it sounds like you're doing the same thing. We're ranking them higher than market. Like you can rank all three of them higher than market and still understand that you're doing that because if one emerges, they could absolutely just dominate in fantasy football, right? Like It's not, if you were to just go by projection, it wouldn't look as clean. It wouldn't look as good, you know, necessarily because you're evening things out a lot more. But there's a very real chance that someone or two of these guys end up just having like monster seasons.
There's, I think, 2 offenses this year, and there's probably more, but 2 off the top of my head that I just want you all to have pieces of and a piece from, right? And that's why I'm ranking them higher than consensus. One's the Bears and the other one's the Chargers.
Right,
like
exactly.
I just want you guys to exit.
I knew you were going to say the Chargers.
Yeah, a player on one of those 2 teams.
Yeah, agreed.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
ChatGPT can do more than answer questions. It can help you get real work done. ChatGPT Work is built for bigger projects with multiple steps. You bring the goal along with the information it needs, like briefs, notes, files, feedback, calendars, data sets, or project plans. Then, ChatGPT can help turn all of that into something useful. An analysis, a tracker, a deck outline, a prototype, or a workflow you can keep shaping. It can also use approved apps, connected tools, files, and browser context to help move the work forward. And you stay in control. You give direction, review drafts, approve actions, redirect the work, and choose the final output. So you spend less time sorting through busy work and more time making progress on the work that matters. Put ChatGPT to work on your most ambitious ideas and projects. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting Work Mode. Available on Plus and Pro plans.
Another team I like is Jacksonville. You know, there's a lot of fun pieces there. The guy, you know, you can maybe argue Parker Washington's getting more hype, but Bashaw Tutin's getting a ton of steam right now. So where are you at with the backfield there with Tutin and C-Rod?
Yeah, I think Hayden and I are on different ends of this one. Like stepping back, okay? If Chris Rodriguez is standing in the way of a player potentially having a breakout season, I want to take that gamble every single time.
That's exactly how, yes.
You know?
Yep.
Now, is it that simple because of the history that Chris Rodriguez and Liam Cohen have? Maybe not.
Right.
You know? And then I don't know if you saw this quote recently from Liam Cohen. It did not endear like a lot of optimism for me necessarily. So he said, I've worked with Chris Rodriguez. What he brings to the table is efficiency. What we are hunting up is efficiency. First of all, this hunting up thing that James Gladstone like instilled. I mean, James Gladstone is he's on my radar.
He's on my, after this draft. Oh, he's definitely on my radar after this draft.
Well, and I even mean like every single one of his phrases feels like it came from, you know, a self-help book.
Yeah.
And he like talks his hands and
like
all.
He faked
Anyways.
it. He faked it to the top. Yeah.
Anyways, he might be really good. It's just his communication style is very scripted.
Sure.
It feels like. Continue on the quote. It's very difficult to create explosives in the running game. So what we are hunting up is efficiency. 4, 6, 8, 10, 4, 6, 8, 10. We have to evolve. I think that's aiming really low, to be honest.
It sounds like you're an explosive.
You're Liam Cohen.
Run.
Yeah, you're Liam Cohen. You had Bucky Irving as the running back 11 when he started games for you during his rookie season.
Yeah.
You had Travis Etienne last year as the running back 10 in points per game when he started. And then now you're like, well, we only want 6-yard gains and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And however, when you look at the efficiency metrics, it can be success rate, it can be first down or touchdown rate of runs and all that type of stuff. Chris Rodriguez is like top 5 or top 7 in every single one of those metrics. Not far behind those Bashal Tutin.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So it's not like we're talking about guys on the polar extremes here.
Yes.
They're very close. And when you go back and watch, like, things just didn't work out for Bashal Tutin in a lot of ways, where he would just trip over his own feet, trip over an offensive lineman, maybe go the wrong way.
There was wasn't a Thursday night game where he ran into a just in the back of the defender or whatever and fell, and that was like the clip that everyone's like, oh, he has no vision, he's terrible, and they just ran with that. Yeah.
And there was one against the Cardinals where like he jukes someone in the backfield and like gets into open space and should take on a safety at the third level and then just falls over himself.
Right.
So, maybe that is just him. Maybe he's clumsy, or maybe he's, a sick athlete who had cool underlying metrics coming out of Virginia Tech and just improves in his second season. Yeah. So I am, and I know he's going much earlier, but I'm taking way more Bashal Tutin than I am Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I started a meme last year with hashtag all roads lead to Bashal Tutin. So okay. I loved him as a prospect. That was the thing. Like pre-combine stuff, I do an episode every year on running back and wide receiver prospects who produce like studs in college. And this is pre-combine before he really shot up because of the 40, obviously. He was one of the guys that I called out that checked every box that I'm looking for from a production standpoint. And so that got me on him. And then I was almost like upset that he ran such a good 40 because then, it made the market jump in on him, and so on. I also think that coaches are starting to realize more and more how important disguising what they're doing is. And that's what the Rams have leaned into so much with Kyron and Blake Corum. And, they didn't really do that last year in Jacksonville so much because, there were times where like they manufactured some receiving stuff to Tutin for sure. But I don't see why we shouldn't or can't just project last year's backfield with this year's players in Jacksonville and kind of work off of that workload, like where Tutin's the Travis Etienne and Chris Rodriguez is the Tutin, right? Which kind of makes sense because if you look at like they would sprinkle in Tutin at the goal line last year, for instance, which by the way, I don't know why we're making the assumption that Chris Rodriguez is automatically the goal line guy when Tutin was great at the goal line last year, Yeah,
he was subbed in some third and fourth down stuff.
Right,
when
right.
Etienne wasn't getting there.
Right, exactly. And so I kind of see it as like, why can't Tutin just be that Travis Etienne role and potentially be even better in it, because I think he's more explosive than Etienne is at this point. Like Travis Etienne's, I guess I'm officially going with Etienne. I talked about this on the podcast last week. I guess I'm officially rolling with it. I know.
I say both in a single episode. So
yeah, I do too. But I'm rolling with it.
Again, I'm on the fence, Zacharias in here.
Look, I'm feeling very very bold right now to go with it. So I'm going to run with it. But Travis Etienne's numbers last year and his actual performance wasn't like stellar. It wasn't like he was out of control great. And I know that, Tutin didn't have as many explosive runs last season. And, at one point, you can look at trends. It's not a good trend whenever you don't have those explosive runs. He had one in the, 20-yard run in the playoffs. But to me, I'm just trying to be like, I don't want to be so strict from a numbers perspective. And I need to just be logical and say he was unbelievably explosive in college. Like we know that he's explosive,
Two things on that. One, I think Zane made the comparison that is this similar to the Cincinnati backfield when it was Chase Brown and Zach Moss? Yeah. And like Bashal Tutin is the Chase Brown that wasn't a first round pick. And then Zach Moss is the veteran that comes in and you think is going to like own the work. And I know that was an injury, but he ended up not. And then Chase Brown just got, kind of auditioned for every single role until now he's one of the highest snap rate players in the league, know, and I mean, I'm drafting so much Chase Brown this year when I can because I think he has like the best running back environment of any player out there.
Yeah, better offensive line there too this year.
Definitely. And then the second part is, I mean, I would be shocked if we're out there in the first series of the NFL season and that's not like a Bashal Tutin drive or Bashal Tutin doesn't get the first crack at it. And so I am just banking on Bashal Tutin not falling flat in his face for the first 2 or 3 games, getting the first opportunity and making the most of it. It's that simple.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's a very real chance that he's a league-winning player in fantasy. Yep. Like it could very easily. This is the environment where that can happen.
Yeah, we just did a show on our 11 players that like we would term league winners that upside wins championships, and he was one that I nominated. Yeah, so we're on the same page there.
I'm glad that you're on the train, baby.
Yeah, man.
We need as many as we can get. All right, I know that we've gone for about an hour, but I do want to ask you a couple questions before I let you go. Who are a couple guys that you're targeting that you think are huge values, and then two guys that you're avoiding who you think are big avoids right now?
I'm really drafting Christian Watson, and he was the player that I had in mind when I said I love all of like the 3rd and 4th round wide receivers, and so I'll draft like each of them in different spots as often as I can.
Yep.
But kind of when we get to, Christian Watson's now going in round 5 in best ball, but like on Yahoo, Christian Watson is a round 6 player. To me, he just stands out of that group.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people still have early career Christian Watson in mind, that he lived in this high variance world, that he ran super hot during his rookie year with Aaron Rodgers, and it was pure go balls, vertical routes when they hit. That was great. I mean, this time last year, we didn't even know when Christian Watson was going to play.
Yeah.
I want to put that on the record. And then also, when he got back on the field last year, his game totally evolved.
Totally agree.
Like 3rd and 6, he was the go-to receiver. 2nd and 9. And like you can see how his game evolved if you just look at the routes that he ran. I believe last year he had more out route catches than he ever had targets in those other years combined. Like his out route rate went from 7% in his career up to 35% last year. So it goes to what we just talked about, the gimme stuff, right?
Yeah.
And now he's the route runner on this team to attack like every blade of grass. And the frustrations hopefully are no longer here with the Packers just cycling all these guys in and out. And then I love what Jordan Love just put out there of Matthew Golden is the X. We know Jaden Reed is mostly the slot, and Christian Watson, despite being bigger than both, is going to be the Z.
Yeah.
And that just gives us motion. It gives us into stacks. It gives us free space that he's then going to maximize even more. So obviously the concern is always with Christian Watson that he's not going to play a full season. But to me, that's a major reason why we can get him in the 6th round.
Right.
And we're aiming for upside. He was another one of these players for me that I think can be a league winner this season.
Love the call. He's a target in the draft guide this year. If you look at last year too, not only was he awesome in fantasy and really efficient on a per route run basis, his route share was lower than what we typically see from him. And now, it's like 71% when it's typically last time we saw him healthy was closer to like 78 to 80%. And now you don't have Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, like you said. And so there's not going to be that rotation that's just frustrated the crap out of us over the last handful of years. So I'm with you. Give me another one.
I mean, can I do early picks? Like, you
can do whatever you want. Whoever you think is great value.
This has changed, I think, on every platform in the last week, and maybe I'll take a little bit of credit for it. No, best ball, it's still this way. Like, why is Ashton Jeanty going ahead of Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, you're a big Saquon guy, question. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we just saw him 2 years ago be the number 1 player in fantasy football.
Yeah.
And I know so much of the conversation around the Eagles right now is, well, what is Sean Mannion going to pluck out of, Jalen Hurts as a passer? How does Devontae Smith step into the shoes of A.J. Brown? What does Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers bring? To me, none of it matters unless they get the rushing attack back to where it was.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're talking going from like bad to good. Just last year it was a bit too average, right? Like the yards before contact, which, can be a metric that we can debate. I firmly believe that getting back to a successful rushing attack and an explosive rushing attack is what then changes the math for the passing game to get easier. And so last season with a very injured offensive line, I understand why that wasn't the case. And then just from watching, I don't think that Saquon has like lost a step or we've gotten to the cliff and all that type of stuff. So
yeah,
if the environment, and I understand Jeff Stoutland is no longer there as the offensive line coach and Hall of Famer at that, I just think it is critical for this team to get back to Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying he's going to get like the 85% work that he got when he was the number 1 scoring player, because I think Tank Bigsby actually is quite good and quite fun, and I'm drafting a lot of Tank too. But I just think people are kind of hoping that Ashton Jeanty has a season like Saquon Barkley when we can just draft Saquon Barkley a bit later.
I'd said in my regression episode this week, Barkley also 1 for 14 in goal line rushes last year.
Yes, exactly.
Like just ridiculous. I mean, now obviously he's not seeing the super easy stuff because Jalen Hurts gets the tush push, but still.
But are we doing the tush push as much?
Like last
year they didn't. It was not as successful, and that's why Dallas Goedert got so many touchdowns, because they flicked it.
Yeah.
And now what if those are just Saquon Barkley runs?
It's a good point. It's a good point. Very good point. All right, real quick, 2 players that you're not into.
I also could have done Ken Walker on that last one too.
I love that. I like that tier of guys in general. Like it's hard not to, but yeah, Ken Walker I also think is an incredibly good click right now, especially season long platforms. I think on Yahoo right now, isn't he like 20th overall or something like he goes a lot, like a decent bit later than some of the other, just given where we're drafting in the second round, like than some of those other running backs.
Totally. I think I have Ken Walker as my 13th overall player.
Yeah, I think it's
Hayden's up to 9th overall with Ken Walker the third.
Ooh, okay. So he's very bullish. I like it though. I love the fit with Walker.
I mentioned Xavier Worthy earlier, and look, we're talking, further down the board with him. Yeah. But I mean, some of these numbers with Xavier Worthy are actually laughable in that, this is somewhat a big number, but he's only cleared 80 receiving yards 3 times in 34 career games. But then our buddy Nick Ercolano posted that in games where Rashee Rice has played, Xavier Worthy has averaged 2.7 catches per game.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
And then, I was somewhat optimistic of Xavier Worthy coming into the league, but then watching him since, I understand, last year after the first time he touched the football, his shoulder exploded and we don't know what we got with him. I'm just trying to figure out, what is he in the league now, And especially now, tied to a quarterback who's been one of the worst downfield passers in the NFL. I also think Xavier Worthy is the latest example of just because you're fast, it doesn't make you a great downfield player because, average to good corners that might be slower, but they're physical, make him play at their speed. And then he can't really separate and go up and get it and all that type of stuff. So I'm just not drafting much Xavier Worthy. And I know that's easy to say for 11th round pick, but the other one, can I just say all Cardinals? And I don't want to do a sweeping thing here. And this is the most basic analysis I'm ever going to give, but it just feels weird to have 4 Arizona Cardinals drafted in the top 95 overall in your home leagues for a team that is projected for the fewest amount of points in the NFL this season. Yeah.
That has it's Jacoby Brissett / Carson Beck. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I would actually be more optimistic that they could hit that mark if I knew Jacoby Brissett was going to get 17 games.
Exactly.
But I am certain we're not going to get 17 games of Jacoby Brissett. We're going to get some of Carson Beck and Gardner Minshew and all that territory. So I'm not drafting Trey McBride where he's going. Can't do it.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Love. I wish I could sprinkle it in. It's even kind of rich to me where we're talking about the hot hand comments. I don't mind because he should be the hot hand because he's that much better.
Exactly.
And going back to, Breece Hall's rookie season and Mike LaFleur, I think he had 9, 12 and 13 touches his opening 3 games and then was the running back 9 the rest of the season because he earned it. But at the same time, I'm just kind of nervous of the environment. And then, the Marv and Michael Wilson stuff, I'm just kind of not into.
I am lower than the market on all 3 when I look at my rankings versus 3 as in the pass catchers. When I look at my rankings versus what is going on in consensus. And then there's certain platforms where Love go like ESPN, he's a really, really high pick, RB 6 or something. It's crazy.
Oh, really?
It's he's just very, very high. And I can't get behind that at all. I think that he belongs in the Breece range from a from a rankings perspective. The Marv's look, I think that Michael Wilson is good, but I also have a lot of worry with what happened even with Brissett when Marvin Harrison Jr. was running a normal complement of routes and snaps and stuff. And then obviously I still think Marv is going to be on the field most and, play that X role for them. And I still think that there's some upside there. And I've drafted both, a little bit more Marv than Michael Wilson in best ball, but I'm a little bit underweight still. And the Trey McBride thing that I go back to, I wrote about this in the draft guide this year. He ran 120 more routes than I think Travis Kelce was second last year. Yes. And even if you just go and you regress that to, and you just lower that to where Travis Kelce was at in that number of routes that he ran. So he would still rank first in the NFL, tied for first in the NFL in routes run. And if you maintained his fantasy points per route run, Trey McBride's, he would have scored 3.2 fewer fantasy points per game, which, sure, he'd still be good. He'd still be over that 15 mark, but it's not nearly as dominant as he was last year. And that's a fantasy points per route run number where those fantasy points were on an insane number of end zone targets that I don't think we can just assume is going to be there year over year. So I'm with you. I've had a really, really hard time with McBride. I'm looking at rankings right now and, to me, he's more mid-late, like late third oftentimes for me. Like I'm not even that far, but I'm a little bit like, it's how I look at tight ends in general. I don't want to take on that opportunity cost as often in season long than what the market generally does, except for Brock Bowers this year. I'm fine with just.
Yeah. If you look over the last like 7 days, he and Brock Bowers actually on Yahoo are only like 3 picks apart.
It's crazy to me.
Insane. Yeah. Isn't like the 120 routes, isn't that like 3 games, basically? More than the next closest tight. Like, that is nuts.
I know.
He played 3 more games than the next closest tight end.
For the record, the only guy who ran more routes at wide receiver than Michael Wilson last year was Jamar Chase, and it was by 1 route. And if you look at guys who run 600 or more routes year over year, there's almost always a decline in routes run because there's just natural regression of these teams not throwing as much.
Yeah. Now, I can hear a lot of people say, well, they're going to be so bad that it's just going to be garbage time all the time. That is one of those like fantasy phrases that gets thrown at me where I want to push back on, because garbage time means you sucked for 3 quarters or 3.5 quarters and you didn't score enough points. So then you have the confidence in the final 6 minutes, 10 minutes to then say to yourself, oh yeah, now we flip the switch on and we're going to score, like have a bunch of yards and score a bunch of points.
Yes.
Like sometimes it worked, and it did for them last year with Jacoby and Petzing and all this type of stuff. But, now it's a new coach. It's potentially new quarterbacks involved too. And I don't think you can just like bank on flipping that switch every single time here.
For the record, I've always said, it takes a garbage performance to create garbage time, and so like
shout out Fantasy Douche. He used to talk about this all the time.
Yeah, right. But the other thing, like I've comped Michael Wilson a couple months ago to last year's Jerry Jeudy, where it's a very, very similar, took an injury to Cedric Tillman to open things up a little bit more. You get a changing quarterback to Jameis, where that opened things up from a volume perspective and just kind of throwing it down the field and giving me a high target share. And then we saw what happened last year with the Browns and with Jeudy. It's just hard to repeat that kind of situational production, and I have the same concerns with Arizona. Could it bite us? Sure, because they have a tough schedule this year. It's one of the toughest in the league. And so they could see those negative scripts and they could end up being really pass heavy still. But I question what this will look like with like not only 3 really good pass catchers now, but now you have a legit pass catching threat out of the backfield in Jeremiah Love. So it could, the math is just not mathing as much with Arizona. Yep. So I like the call out. All right, last question. Bold take of this fantasy season. Give us some fire before I let you go.
Okay, the Chargers are top 3 in overall points this year.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Is that not fire enough for you?
It's a little.
Okay, I'll give you another one, and this might be even less. You got to give me the gauge here, I guess. Brock Bowers is the player you need. He is the player.
Period. Okay. There's a lot of players in the league, so that's fire. That's hot. Yeah.
Yeah. On some platforms, there are 18 rounds you have to make picks on. Him being one of and the player that you need. Yeah. I think that's
if it's the player, then yes, that's bold.
We had Ryan Paganetti on the show. I'm sure everyone's seen his tweets lately. He, worked for the Eagles and then the Jaguars, and this past year worked for Pete Carroll and the Raiders. And he said like their organizational goal was to have Brock Bowers break the NFL record in targets and catches. It kind of felt like that was going to work through the first 3 quarters of the season. And then obviously injury struck. I think Brock Bowers might be the player, other than Ladd McConkey, which was going to be my point here with the Chargers, that is going to see the biggest benefit with the trend of heavier personnel looks. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because in those situations, the best pass catchers then get funneled the opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so like Ryan Heath has written about this, where 51% of Jackson Smith and Jigba's production last year came on the 38% of the snaps where there were 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field last year. Mm-hmm. And, Clint Kubiak, coming from that exact system, is bringing it now to the Raiders. And then it's not just 2 tight end looks that they can do with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. It's also, he loves to use a fullback, and they just didn't do it as much last year with Oots being hurt. Yeah. And so they brought in Connor Hayward to do that from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. And so while the positional titles might be different, I think you can do very, very similar things with Brock Bowers and JSN. And I mean, this is obvious one of those situations where he's going to be the funnel player compared to like all the other pass catchers they have on that team. Yeah, that's great analysis. And I couldn't agree more. He's to me, like you said, the gap between him and McBride just does not make much sense on most of these platforms. I think that
especially in shallow leagues. If you're like an 8 or 10 team league where you can get away with taking those onesies early because the opportunity cost isn't as high, just smash Brock Bowers. Like, he's the onesie to take early, in your draft. So great call. Josh, this was fantastic. I always love talking ball with you. It's good to do it over the summer. I feel like we do a lot of prospect stuff usually together. So it was nice to change that up a little bit.
I'll talk to you again in 2.5 years, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We'll never know where they can find you and what you've been working on.
Yeah, we're now at Yahoo. Just you can search Josh and Hayden Yahoo Fantasy Football on YouTube. And right now we're doing 4 videos a week. And then that'll be even more pretty soon. So this is like our favorite time of the year when these preseason games happen, because we watch every single snap. Well, not every single snap. I would say every single game. And then give our analysis and go through all the snap counts and change our rankings and overreact and underreact and all that type of stuff. So always a good time to join you, buddy.
Yeah. Great chopping it up. Make sure you guys are checking out lateround.com. Get the draft guide. It is on sale right now. It'll hit your inbox. Updates happen every Friday. So that's rankings updates, market score updates, players to target, players to avoid, all of that. Otherwise, everyone, enjoy your weekend. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
Some people use ChatGPT to answer questions. Others use it to get real work done. With ChatGPT Work, you bring the goal, plus real inputs like briefs, notes, files, feedback, data, and project plans. It can help turn them into an analysis, tracker, deck outline, prototype, or workflow you can review and keep shaping. You stay in control, giving direction and choosing the final output. Put ChatGPT to work on your most ambitious ideas and projects. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting Work Mode. Available on Plus and Pro plans.
This is Tony Ayo from The Real Report with Tony Ayo and Uncle Murder. You ever notice how everything keeps going up? Rent, streaming, even extra salsa at your favorite burrito spot? But with Boost Mobile, you don't have to play the will this go up soon game. Boost Mobile offers an unlimited talk, text, and data plan at a price that'll never go up. It's the same price you'll pay for life. Switch now for unlimited wireless at a price that'll never go up, only at Boost Mobile. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.